So Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by Hall of Fame promoter Frank Warren. With just 5 days to go now until the most anticipated all-British fight of the year, Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce, for about 9 titles, I think, not least of which the coveted Lonsdale belt. Where does this rank in terms of the fights you've put together over the years of domestic rivalries?
Well, it's right up there, isn't it? I mean, we've got 2 undefeated heavyweights who are getting it together very early in their pro career. And it does very, very rarely does that happen. And they're 2 outstanding amateurs. You've got in Joe, the guy who won the silver medal in the Olympic Games, got a wealth of experience. Should have been the gold medalist. I thought he won that. But, he's got a wealth of experience. He's done everything that's been asked of him as a pro, beaten some good fighters, former world champion Stavern. Very knowledgeable, very strong, tough, against the new kid on the block who had limited amateur experience as a senior, only 7 bouts, but's done everything that's been asked of him, been stepped up as he's gone along in his career, considered by a lot of people who are who are quite knowledgeable as to be the next guy, the next big guy. And I think I'll say it quite honestly, at this stage of his career, he's the best young heavyweight I've been involved with. He's done everything that's been asked of him. He's improved with every fight. He's learnt from every fight. He's doing some tremendous stuff in the gym. He's not a one-trick pony as people thought he was, just a big puncher. He can box. He's got a good jab. And I think this fight is going to be explosive, but it's going to be about who controls the fight, who's got the best jab, who's got the best boxing ability. The power is there with both of them. They both got great knockout ratios. Only one person's gone the distance with Joe and with Daniel. 26 fights and 24 of them between them have all been knocked over. So it's going to be explosive. A lot at stake. And what I find intriguing about the fight is that both of the fighters believe they've got the beating of each other. Each of them think they can beat the other guy. It's not like a passing of the baton. These are the guys getting in there at the sort of very early stages I mentioned earlier of their professional career and getting it on. And the prize for the winner, besides becoming British, Commonwealth and European champion, you've got that spot, which in the WBO he holds at the moment, Daniel Dubois, number 2, which will be next year in shape or in some shape or form, the mandatory to either the winner of Usyk and Joshua if they get it on, or if Joshua vacates, the mandatory to Usyk. So a lot on the line here for him.
You talked about strength, technical ability, power. What do you feel about both men's chins and durability? Do you feel they're both proven at the highest level?
Well, look, they haven't been in at the highest level, have they? Joe's been in at the highest level in the amateur. Daniel hasn't done that at senior level. He's been caught a couple of times in fights. Larty caught him with a tremendous shot and he took it. He has been clipped. Nathan Gorman caught him with a good shot. But, we're stepping up again. He's stepping up a level again. That we'll see. And, and it's the other side of it is Joe does have a good chin and he's tough, but can he stand the power of Daniel, who is an explosive puncher? So there's a lot of queries and question marks there, but which should get answered next Saturday.
Now, if Daniel goes out, and this is what a lot of people are predicting, goes out, gives Joe a bit of a hammering for the first 3 or 4 rounds, but Joe's still standing, tough guy, starts coming back with his own. Do you have belief in Daniel that he can get on his toes and box his way to victory rather than blast his way to victory?
When Daniel fought Nathan Gorman, a lot of the experts were saying the same thing. They felt that Nathan would, for the first, would for the first 4 or 5 rounds have to withstand the bombs that Daniel throws, and then he would basically take over boxing wise. But the key to that win over Nathan, being very honest about it, was actually Daniel's jab. He established his jab from the first round, and I thought he was quite key to Harry eventually won the fight, working off of his jab. He's got a superb jab. and he realised that. And another dimension is added to his armoury. You know, he fought the old trial horse, the guy who you know, all the young heavyweights have to go through in Kevin Johnson. And that fight, it basically headhunted that fight. He was throwing shots all the time at Johnson's head. You look at him now, he throws a lot of body shots. So he learns. And that's what I like about him. He's a learner. He watches it, goes back over it. And you couldn't meet anybody more. Well, I've never met anyone so devoted to becoming a champion that they don't do anything other than box, train, box, and watch fights and speak boxing. That's all he does. He doesn't even know there's a lockdown. He just lives that life. That's what he does.
So someone should tell him, perhaps.
Leave it to us.
Do you think those body shots will be key against Joe? A, because it will take away some of his volume, and B, because he was hurt by a body shot against Bryant Jennings early on.
He was, and he was hurt in that first round of that fight on Tyson's undercard. Look, that could be the key. And what I have noticed is he's obviously shed a lot of weight, Joe. You know, if you look at Joe, I see a picture he put out yesterday or the day before, and he looks a bit ripped. But he's been in lockdown, so obviously he's not been. I don't know what he does in between his fights and that, but obviously he's been training hard. So maybe he's looking for speed because he's not normally a fast fighter, is he? He's quite, you know, he comes at you and he just stays as it is, but he wears you down and takes the fight to you. He's strong. Who knows whether that's going to make any difference to him? Is he going to be able to change his style at the age of 35? I don't know.
You're picture this, you're sitting ringside, you're watching the fight. It's all going well, and then suddenly Joe lands a big haymaker, Daniel hits the deck. What's going through your mind at that point?
Look, I hope that's not going to happen. Well, I hope, you know, I don't even want to even think about, you know, what happens if he gets hit on the chin. If he gets hit on the chin, all I'd want to see him do is get up. Simple as that. You know, like Tyson got hit on the chin in that fight against Deontay Wilder. You know, I thought it was all over, but he got up. And that's what champions do. Well, that's what fighters who've got good chins do. They get up. They get up and lever it. But you know what? Whether Joe gets knocked over again, you know, that's not really the end of him, is it? These guys got a lot to give boxing still. And I always look at it, and I hate to, you know, sort of say it, but I look at Amir Khan with a fight against Bradis Prescott. Fight I never ever wanted. I didn't want that fight, and you know, his trainer and his dad wanted the fight. But I look at that, and that was all over in a round. 2 fights later, we got Amir back in it, and he won a world title. So it's not the end of the world. Getting beaten is not the end of the world. For Joe Joyce, for Daniel Dubois, it's not the end of the world. It's how you come back. It wasn't the end of the world when James DeGale got beat by George Groves when I put them both together. They both went on, early stage of their career, both of them went on and won world titles.
You've been quite honest about the fact that although you promote both guys, Daniel's your man and your big hope for the future. Do you think that's given the other side, if we can call them that, the bit between their teeth a little bit, Sam Jones and Joe, that they're kind of an outsider within their own group?
Well, they're not outsiders. The fact is, I signed Daniel from day one. You know, he's with me day one. Joe came after a few fights and Daniel was already there then. So it's not a question of preference. I'm being asked who I fancy to win the fight. I'm being asked for an opinion, so I'm giving an opinion. You know, I've been wrong before, and I'm sure I'll be wrong again in the future. But that's for them to prove that. And if it gives him, if it gives Joe something more to do and more to prove, then good on him. That's what boxing's about, going out there and doing your best. What you can't take away, and I've already said it, is they both fancy. They've got the beating of each other, irrespective of who I fancy, who you fancy, who Sam Jones or Uncle Tom Cobley fancies. They both fancy it. That's all that matters.
And you said you fancy Daniel Dubois to win. How do you see it coming? Do you think he's got what it takes to get Joe out of there? Very tough, big guy, Joe Joyce, regardless of how you feel about boxing ability and so on. He's very durable. Will he get him out of there, or will it have to go to the cards?
I genuinely think this fight will be explosive. I think they'll go out. I don't think it's just going to walk to the centre ring and just knock lumps off each other. It's they're much smarter than that. But I think it's going to be a high-paced fight. I think it's going to be. I think there's a lot. They both big punchers, as we've already said. They'll be throwing bombs, and I think somebody will go.
And you obviously think that's Joe because you've already said you think Daniel's going to win.
I think Dan. Look, he's a young man. He's young, and that can work against him. By the way, that he's young, may not have the experience. There's an arguments for each thing here. Joe's experience, Joe's strengths. Joe's a big puncher himself. He's the experience. Daniel, young guy, is he going to beat the old guy, etc., etc.? But Joe's not got miles on his clock. He's not some fighter who's been around, being in as a professional, certainly been in real tough, toe-to-toe fights yet. He hasn't done that yet, so there's no miles on the clock as a pro.
Now, it's live, of course, on BT Sport, not box office, no extra fee, free to subscribers. Do you expect it to be the biggest boxing audience for subscription TV this year?
Well, I would hope a lot of people are tuning in to see it because it's such an exciting fight. Everybody's been talking about it all year since we made the fight back in January. I hope they all tune in. I hope they'll do tune in and watch it. I'm quite sure it should be.
So it should be the biggest, beating your own record, of course.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think everybody, in these days where you don't have a lot of contact with people, but on the phone and so forth, everybody talks about it. It comes up in every conversation.
Great.
And it's going back to the States live as well, ESPN.
Of course. Yeah, well, that'll be great for both guys. All right, let's move on. Obviously, it's hard to talk about anything else this week, but a couple of things I'd like to talk to you about before we go.
We should talk quickly before I'm not saying we've got a great undercard, by the way. Now, Hamza Shiraz against Pitto for the WBO European Super Welter title, and we've got Jack Catterall. This is a sort of warm marking time fight, and then after Andrade has his fight, was it next week or the week after? Then we've got 7 days to get that fight on to get make that fight important for Andrade. Very important.